All right. Good evening, everybody. How is everyone? And welcome back to Authors Write Aloud. Now, tonight we have a really special episode, and we named it Invisible Women because, well, it's ladies' night, and I am totally overrun by women. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I might end up having to go off camera because they're going to take over. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about author bias, with gender bias, with female authors writing, and also the new upcoming thing with men writing a female lead. Um, and kind of go into that a little bit. And I have some wonderful ladies on here, so I'm going to give them a little bit of time to introduce themselves one at a time. I always go with ladies first, but I don't know who to pick from tonight. But I had a special guest jump in at the last second, so I think I'll start in with her. Katie Salidas, thank you for joining us, and why don't you introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Oh, thanks, Richard. So, as you said, I'm Katie Salidas. I am a paranormal urban fantasy author. I'm also the producer and host of the Spilling Ink Show, where we do kind of like this. We talk to people in the writing community about what they do, why they do, and how they do what they do.
Excellent. And Nita.
Okay, I'm Anita Stewart. I write under AF Stewart. I write horror and fantasy and little poetry. I'm the author of the Saga of the Outer Islands trilogy, one of the authors in the Hell's Empire anthology, and I recently released my latest poetry book, Places of Poetry, and that's me.
Oh, all right. Let's go with Beth.
Hey everyone, I'm Beth Barani. I write young adult adventure fantasy, including the award-winning Henrietta the Dragon Slayer trilogy. I also write paranormal romance, and by day, I help authors. I'm a creativity coach for writers and run an online school specifically for fiction writers. And our latest book is Plan Your Novel Like a Pro. So that's me, and I look forward to tonight.
All right, PJ.
Hi, I'm PJ McLean, and although I am an IT geek during the day, I sit in front of the computer all night long to write. I have two series. One is The Free Wolves, which is urban fantasy paranormal romance, and the other one is The Harmony Dupree Mysteries, featuring my dear friend Harmony Dupree, who is an unwitting female sleuth.
And last but not least, Holly.
I'm Holly Glogale Morgan, author of the Midnight to Morning trilogy. Also, upcoming Song of Soraya dystopian novel that's about 60% finished right now. And I'm really happy to be here.
All righty. Myself, I am the lovely Richard White, author of Shattered Glass, a brand new publication that just came out of poetry covering depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, drug addiction, suicide awareness, and God only knows what all. I basically go to the darkest places that I have ever been. But enough about me. We'll get talking about me later. Let's talk a little bit about the show quick. Authors Write Aloud tonight is simulcasting on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. So if you've got some questions, feel free to give us a chat. Shoot us a question, and we will get to it as soon as we can. And also, leave your comments and all that good stuff over on YouTube or wherever we are, wherever you may be watching us. All right, so many years we have had this stigma, I guess is what I would call it, of women using a pseudonym or their initials or different ways of doing things to publish their books because women are kind of being pushed under a little bit under the blanket versus male authors. At least that's my take on this whole subject. And I want to let you ladies kind of coin in on it. What do you think of it?
Well, that is one of the reasons why I use my initials is because when I started out in fantasy and then I went into horror and I was thinking, would there be preconceptions? Would I be classed as paranormal romance? Because I write ghost and folklore based horror and fantasy. So yeah, that's basically one of the reasons why I started using my initials as my writer name.
Same here. It's the reason why I just chose by going with H instead of going with the full name.
And
I'm
Beth,
actually, oh,
you go, Beth.
oh, thanks, Vijay. I'm actually about to launch a sci-fi mystery series, and I'm going to switch to initials, use BD Barani, because actually I just want to make a distinction between my other work. The other work is young adult, it's sweet romance, and this is going to be edgier, more adult. So while I'm aware of the biases that women have suffered and why they've had to use initials to get published, um, that isn't why I'm switching. It's more of a branding issue. And because I want to signal that it's a different tone, different issues, and a little darker and more adult. So, but I'm quite aware of the studies that have been done to show that when women query using initials, they get better reception than if they queried using their full name. That there's inherent biases in editorial staff against women and considering them as serious authors. Um, and I, yeah, I'm very aware of that.
I was doing some research on it today, and it looks like the gap is closing. I mean, some of the statistics were getting closer to 50-50, but it's still like there was one where I was reading about she used her initials for one set of copies that she sent in to different publishers, and she used her full name for another set, and she had eight different responses with the one, and she had 30 different responses with the other using just her initials. I don't know, that's like, oh, they're definitely not there yet.
Well, and even but take a look at Nora Roberts. I mean, yes, she claims she chose J.D. Robb just to make a distinction between her sci-fi and her romance. But think how much more masculine J.D. Robb is than Nora Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what she says, but I wonder if deep in her heart she did that because of the stigma of women writers in sci-fi. Although I believe that has lessened. I mean, granted, we have Anne McCaffrey and Mercedes Lackey and who are edging, known and recognized. But if you're starting out, it's still a tough road.
It is.
It's very much genre specific too. Like you said, with sci-fi, it's usually the more masculine names when it comes to sci-fi. With horror, same thing. Romance kind of goes both ways. I've actually known some male erotic authors who switch to female sounding names or initials so that they are perceived as writing for the genre appropriately. But yeah, I don't think it's going to change. I think we've kind of got expectations on who's going to write what, and until we really shatter those expectations, you'll see it continuing.
Well, part of that shattering has to happen with our children, because until boys are taught that it's okay to have a female heroine in a book, there's always, I mean, we have to start there and let it grow through the years fix this.
It's one of the reasons I love urban fantasy so much is it's
Right.
usually, it's the kick-ass woman, hero character in most of those stories. And that's not to say they have to be that way, but you find a lot of times those are the more, girl power, really strong women are represented in urban fantasy.
Yeah, going back to your point on the genre, um, as a horror author, I found far less bias in the horror community than I have in the fantasy community. So yeah, I mean, most of the authors I know, at least the indie community of authors, are actually female horror writers. I mean, I actually belong to a group called Ladies of Horror, and we have Women in Horror Month as well. I think it's February. So yeah, I mean, the horror community actually is, I think, embracing female writers more so than perhaps in its early years.
You hit the nail on the head though. Indies are so much more willing to do new things, to try new things, to break down barriers than your traditional big five is going to be.
I agree totally. I think the indie community is making great inroads into this. If you look at the awards, the traditional awards for books, you'll still see a male domination in many of the areas. But then you look at Goodreads and other book sites, and it's totally the opposite. It's the female authors that are getting bestsellers and stuff. So yeah, the indie community is definitely making a difference.
And eventually the big five's going to have to pay attention to that. Oh, well, females can write sci-fi, like I write sci-fi, you know, and females can actually write really good, X type of books. Because I mean, when the indie sales start to make a big dent in their profit, they're gonna have to pause and think and maybe change their ideas on that.
Do you think J.K. Rowling using the pseudonym? Now, yes, a lot of it I know had a lot to do with branding because of the success J.K. Rowling has had with the Harry Potter series. Do you think that using Robert Galbraith to write I think it's crime series that she wrote, do you believe that switching to a male name with that pseudonym has something to do with this?
I think so.
Yes, absolutely.
Why else would you, if it wasn't that you were afraid that you weren't going to be taken seriously?
Or maybe she just wanted to fly under the radar. I mean, that's what I heard. And to choose a name that is so completely different than her own, a male name. I mean, I don't know the true story behind it. I think she was trying to see what would happen if she, sent out her own work under a completely different name.
But she could have also gone with a completely different female name too. She specifically chose a male name.
Yeah, the crime genre may be one of those genres that are more biased towards male authors too, as well. Because I mean, with thrillers and the more hardcore crime novels, you see more men than you do women.
True.
Now, what?
I was curious how many of us here are indie authors, because I definitely am.
I am.
Yeah, we're all indie. Yeah, so I think that puts us in a different category. Like I haven't really tested myself, or I have tried to test myself against getting published by a publisher, but when that didn't work out, I went indie. And so I feel like our issues are different, and the biases don't seem to come into play as much. I mean, I have had, boys look at my cover and kind of frown, as if it's just about a girl. And I'm like, yeah, it's about a girl. Of course it is. But I think it comes back to what you were saying, PJ, about, is it about educating children and giving children a wide range of things to read? Is that really where the work needs to happen?
I have to echo your comment there just a second, because I don't know if you can see the book behind me, probably not. It's a girl holding a sword in the middle of the apocalypse. And I'm at Comic-Con a couple weeks ago. I have my table set. I have all of my books laid out. And a guy walks up and he takes just a quick browse of my books and he goes, romance, right? Girl with a sword in the middle of the apocalypse. That's romance. Just
Yeah.
because I'm standing there.
Yeah, people have thought my Henrietta the Dragon Slayer had to include romance. I'm like, where in the title does it indicate, or the cover, that there should be romance in there? And there isn't. I mean, a hint of it, but nothing real.
I did the
So-
same thing. There's just a hint until the third book, and the third book's the only place in one scene does it actually really come forward.
Yeah. My books have no romance. Lots of death, but no romance.
I have a little tiny bit in some of my book series, but for the most part, it's very much a backseat theme. I focus on either the thrill, the mystery, the suspense, the paranormal elements. That's the stuff I prefer to focus on, with relationships being, if it feels like it belongs in the story, sure, it's a side story.
And I found out I was really bad at writing romance. So my books do have a romantic element, but it's not the main part of the story. The action, in fact, my tagline is action with a touch of romance, because I can't write romance worth a hill of beans.
Neither can I.
The series I'm working on now it's full on mystery. Every book's a standalone mystery, but I do have a romantic through line because I do enjoy writing that. And I like the interplay of that relationship, but it doesn't completely, it's not in the foreground, although I want it to be integral to solving the mystery in some way so that it has meaning. But so I guess we're talking also about the stereotypes that we face as women authors, people automatically assuming we're romance authors. There's nothing wrong with being a romance author, I think, but so there's almost that bias in the other direction, like, oh, you're a writer, you must be writing romance.
Yeah, I mean, I avoid using the word paranormal when I'm promoting any of my horror stuff because, you say paranormal, people go, "Oh, you're a paranormal romance writer," and I go,
Jason
"No."
said the same thing last night on our show.
Yeah, it is, but it's even worse for female authors. I mean, yeah, because I mean, paranormal as a promotional word automatically goes paranormal romance.
When it used to mean ghostly apparitions, the supernatural elements, and now it immediately draws you to romance.
Yeah, and when you're a female author writing paranormal with paranormal elements in your book, people automatically assume paranormal romance, and so I stopped using it. I use the word supernatural or straight up horror these days because I mean it avoids that assumption.
Well, and I don't even include sex scenes in my books. I mean, yes, they're paranormal and there is a romantic element, but there's not a sex scene to be had. I'm not sure I could write a sex scene, but the books don't need them. The storyline does not need a sex scene, so I don't include them.
Oh, come on now. You want to add Fabio in there somewhere.
No.
No.
Oh my God, what a stereotype, man.
Anita will kill him.
I'll add Fabio and then I'll kill him off.
There you go.
There you go. There you go.
My romantic hero in my mysteries is a computer geek. Not your standard, alpha at all.
Mine's too busy trying to stop their Earth from going past its tipping point to even really think about the relationship that she's in. It's there, it's off to the side. Sometimes there's a scene where they're talking, but she's way too busy with missions and doing what she does best.
Yeah, a lot of my female characters end up as villains for some reason in my stories, but so yeah, I mean, I do a lot of male characters for protagonists, but a lot of my antagonists end up being female.
That's interesting. I do have in a mystery series that's coming out soon a few female villains, and some of my early readers complimented me on that. They're like, "Oh, I'm glad you threw in some female villains, round it out a little bit." Yeah.
Well, I got to jump in with the whole stereotypical thing and with the romance part of it because I myself and my wife are writing a series together. I don't know how it's going to go.
Good luck.
Most of it is going to be ghost written by me, and then she is going to go through it and add some stuff and tell me what she think I should add for to add some scenes and such. And the first question she said was, when her and I had discussed it, was, asking me about romance, adding romance to it, and this and that. And my biggest thing was, absolutely not. This not because it's Immortal Hunter series, which it's a vampire hunter stories. And no, I said it's not going to be Edward and Bell time 2.0. Absolutely not. um, because I will admit I'm not going to be sure if I can tackle a romantic scene in any aspect. The series is going to be more towards the vampire hunter aspect, so it's going to be a whole lot of vampire killing. And
Love
Okay,
vampires.
go ahead.
occasionally I come across a book that is, take your vampire hunter as an example. And then somewhere in there, there's this thing you're going, no, this doesn't work. It doesn't need the romance. You're taking away from the storyline. So even as a woman, I don't actually want to read romance all the time. Did we lose Richard?
Nope. I'm here. I'm
Oh,
answering to
are they?
Beth. Sorry about that. I'm answering to Beth real quick on the
Okay.
on the sly.
Okay. Trying to find your Facebook message. I too always don't want to read romance. In fact, I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, just straight up adventure, like Elizabeth Moon's books have been some of my recent favorites. Um, and I crave the adventure. I mean, that's what I aim to write. Like what you were saying, PJ, I do like to throw in some romance, maybe some sex scenes in some fun ways, but really kind of as a enhancement to the story and not so much things that drive the plot. So I wish that there was a genre called adventure. Like that's something I've always wished for since I was a small child. So I'm just going to continue to write those kinds of stories, and maybe that adventure as a large category will show up one day.
I had to switch to calling mine more because it was written light sci-fi, but it's really military adventure. But you can't market that in any. People are just like, what, you know. But I mean, they're a spec ops team living in an underground bunker, and yeah, there is some future tech and timeline jumping and things like that. But with as a reader, I think it's been 15 years since I've read a romance book.
Well, Holly, you had me at timeline jumping. I'm there.
Well, it's
But
been,
yeah,
Well,
as
people
a
like
reader, I don't
romance.
even have an interest in reading romance.
Well, people like romance. I think what they really care about is character development and the relationships of the characters as a whole, not necessarily the romantic relationships, but the best friends, the buddy cops, all the different character interactions that happen within a story make us care about whether or not the main character, gets to the end and achieves what they're supposed to achieve, because it's usually the team around them that's helping them. And so whether it's not it doesn't have to be a romantic element, but that development of character relationships between all the secondary characters, I think, is what makes it more interesting.
I had an author reviewer or a book reviewer actually complain about the secondary characters. And I was like, but without them, there isn't really a story. And all the other reviews across my Amazon, I mean, they're all talking about how great the whole story is and all the friends and the people she works with. So hearing it from this one reviewer, I'm like, but they make the story what it is. I mean, it's
I think you chalk that up to you're never going to please everybody all the time.
one girl going solo against the entire world,
Well, that's the old hero's journey, the old archetypal story of one person up against the world. And I know in my stories, my Henrietta the Dragon Slayer stories, it really is one person who ends up joining with a whole bunch of other people, and I realized those are the stories I love, and actually those are the stories that parents are hungry for their kids too, and it's kind of the new paradigm. Even in like Hunger Games, you know, she does this brave act, but in the end it's because of her friends that she succeeds, and
Yeah,
a lot of
it's
stories
an
are
element.
like that.
And that's one of the things that made Harry Potter so good, is all those secondary characters really became part of the team. And you grew with not only the main character, but you grew with all the side characters. You grew with the secondary characters. Some of the characters that only popped in occasionally, you still knew them well enough because they were developed and the relationship with that main character was developed.
Yeah, the secondary characters develop the flavor of the books.
They're so important. Yeah, I see there's a question in the chat on Twitch about asking about inspiration. Where do you go first? Is it a pen and blank piece of paper, or do you use some kind of personal experience?
I didn't have a choice with either of mine. They came to me in dreams. Literally dreams that lasted 3 weeks, every single night. So I'm not in charge of what I write. It just kind of comes that way, and I just put it down.
That's so cool, Holly. I know for me that it's a mixture of like a yearning. Keep looking over at my book. Keep looking over at Henrietta. Like she came to me when I was 20, and I didn't have the writing chops and life experience to write her until I was about 35. And but I just read so much as a kid that I always wished that I could have adventures like those fairy tales I read. So there it's not something I discovered through writing. It was something I discovered through this yearning. And I think a lot of my dreams too, like you, Holly, I had a dream of a woman in a bar and a space station, and that sort of was the spark for this mystery series that I have, that I've been editing madly for the last year or two. And then some ideas do come from writing, ideas by writing out, asking the question, what if this and that together, and then writing that and seeing what happens.
Yeah, most of my stuff comes from what if ideas too. Like what if vampires moved in next door? What if ghosts ran a sailing ship, stuff like that, you know?
That's the best, when you can just do the what if and just let your mind wander and free write. But along with that inspiration question, let me ask you a secondary question to go with it. Who's a pantser and who's the plotter in this group? Because we tend to tackle things differently depending on our writing styles.
I am totally a pantser. I have never plotted a book. I might have a beginning and maybe an end, but I never have the middle. And a lot of times my characters will change my mind on what the end is going to be when I get there. Uh, my one of my mystery books, I knew who I wanted to be the villain, and I wrote my whole book with that person being the villain. But then I got to the end of the book, and all of a sudden, the secondary character who I was just having as a plot point stepped up and said, "Huh, how about me?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And I hardly had to change anything though, because of the way I had written her. It was real easy to turn her into a villain. But I didn't expect that. But my characters very much determine the plot of my books as I'm writing. So I've been known to have discussions with my main characters and go, "Are you kidding me? Really?"
I think
Yeah, I'm a plotter myself. I mean, a lot of my stuff is history based or epic fantasy, so it kind of has to be plotted before you can begin with those things. Yeah.
I'm definitely in the middle. I would say that I've studied a lot of story. I'm a writing teacher. I teach story structure, but I'm very much pantsing it a lot of the times. Like my mystery series, I kind of set up the mystery, who died, and that's it. I don't know who done it. I don't know how done it. I have my main character. I have my secondary characters, and I don't even know who the villain is. Until I work my way through the story by writing. So that's definitely a pantser quality. But I spent a lot of time in prep work and teach that in my plan your novel curriculum and book and stuff, where you just like feed a whole lot of stuff to the imagination, character stuff, world stuff, plot stuff. and inform. I just sort of nurture, like nurturing a garden bed and planting all these seeds. And then it's through the writing process that I discover a lot of the bits and pieces of the story.
I gotta
What's
go with I'm
interesting,
a little bit of both. It all depends what I'm writing. If I'm writing poetry and some short story stuff, I actually will go right off the seat of my pants. It's what comes to me or what is calling to me, what is telling me to write. But when it comes to the stories and books that I'm working on, my larger novellas and novels and stuff, that there I plot everything. I'm writing at my espionage book, Gemini Project. I am writing character development. I'm writing scenes and a lot of other stuff, and I haven't even sat down to try to write the book yet because I have 12 years of research to tie into this one book.
I think
I'm a
your
plotter
style
only because
develops too. Oh, go ahead.
I'm a plotter only because I cheat with the dreams. I mean, it's they you know, I came out with 17 pages of outlines before I even started the first novel, you know. But this new dystopian one I'm working on, I was able to get the beginning and the middle of the story out of the dreams, but there is no ending. So yeah, I'm gonna have to kind of wing it.
There's some fun into that though. The whole pantser mentality of kind of not feeling boxed in by your plot. And well, like I was saying, you develop a different style. When I started writing, it was 100% pantser. I just sat down and what am I writing today? And just, fed the blinking cursor as many words as I could until I was done for that day. And now, while I still enjoy the free writing process, I do kind of give my characters to-do lists, so it's not like a hard outline, but it's kind of like I need to get these certain things done and hopefully I check them off as I go.
Katie, that's really cool. It sounds like you're in the middle between plotting and pantsing. And then I have another question. How many of you use outside prompts? And the reason I'm bringing up is I'm plugging this deck that's I'm just a fan of called Cthulhu. Have you guys heard of this deck? It just came out. It's incredible. It's one of the best creative decks. Actually, it's the only creative deck that I've really thought was amazing. I've used tarot, to like spark inspiration or use to try and craft a character, round out a character, a card for goal, motivation, conflict. But this is doing something else. She went to great lengths to come up with imagery, and I'm just vastly impressed by it. So I was just wondering if anybody else uses other tools like cards or, I don't know, methods of divination or other tools to just get the creative juices flowing.
Yeah, for my short stories, I often, or my shorter fiction, like my flash fiction, I'll use photos, pictures, writing prompts. Yeah, for that. Not so much for my books, but yeah, for the shorter stories. Yeah.
and I guess I just have a hard time getting ideas out of my brain. I don't need the writing prompts because I've got so much going on in my head some days that I can't get it all down on paper. And I've got ideas for books, that 3 years out before I'll ever think I'll get to them. And I just have to write that down somewhere so I don't forget about them in 3 years' time.
I,
I've got one book I've got to go back and rewrite because it's just the wrong time frame. But it's a good story. I just have to either make it newer or older because it's not old enough to be historical and it's not new enough to be current. So I have to find a time frame to put it in. But I haven't run out of ideas yet, so I'm not using story prompts.
I was struggling with description of the community that my main character ends up in the dystopian novel, and I just started looking at freelancer artwork of different dystopian um, themes, and that's helped a lot with jump starting the creative juices because you're seeing the different pieces of art and concept work, and it's like, oh yeah, okay. And then I've been able to go back and start putting in more descriptions of what she's seeing, what it looks like, smells like, what she's feeling walking through it, type of thing.
Whereas most of my stories are based on places I've actually lived. And so therefore it's just part of me. The atmosphere, the trees, they're all things I know because I've lived there. And I've transported them to where I need them to be, which is not so that people don't know exactly where my locations are for various reasons, but they're very much based on real surroundings.
Yeah, I'm trying to design a space station that's a hotel casino, and I realized I have to make some commitments and make some drawings and pick something because I'm finalizing everything, and I have to lock it into place and maybe even find some pictorial representation I can use in my marketing and in my cover. This is challenging because I want to create something that is unique, but also I want to use known science and kind of expand from there. And um, I'm making some big leaps as well in technology. So anyway, that's something I'm faced against. And I've done a lot of research by visiting hotels, especially in Vegas. That was really fun. But I'm still trying to create something new at the same time. So I'm having a lot of fun with that.
May the
Yeah.
Schwartz be with you.
Yeah, I have the same trouble when I'm writing fantasy novels because you have to create cities and you have to create, and when I'm doing steampunk I have to do airships, and so you have to make a Victorian airship that's a cruise ship, and how the heck does it stay up in the air? And that's fun.
For Immortal Hunter series, I'm doing a lot of that prompting, but I use video and TV, movies. For like the Immortal Hunter series, Vampire Hunters, I reflect back to the Blade series. I reflect to Buffy, the television series. I mean, how many years did that go on? Where you can get at least scene stuff, background, information, what the cemetery looks like, or what the city looks like, those kind of things. At least a rough idea, so I have something to start with. And then, of course, I also run with John Carpenter's Vampires. That's one of my favorite vampire hunter movies. Um, and of course, I have reflected back to Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman. The problem is of course it's they're jumping in time. I mean, like Blade and Buffy, they're pretty close to like time era. But then, of course, you go to something with like Van Helsing, and it's kind of staged way back when. So it's kind of hard to be able to blend those together. So it's a lot of research and a lot of things go into it.
Did we cover? Sorry, I didn't get any of the links before the show. Somehow missed out on that. But the article about why there is a bias against female authors. Did we really talk about the why? I mean, I find it like the answer is simple. It's called misogyny. I mean, it's just 2,000 plus years of putting women down, or actually, I think it's a lot longer than that. But I don't know if there's anything else to say, or I'm curious to hear what else you guys have on that.
Except I've always wondered if it really has extended back that far, or if somehow in the Middle Ages it got transformed from one. I mean, because there have been female led societies across the globe if you look in history. And I've often wondered if somewhere it didn't just get changed along the way, and then the males rewrote the history books just like, winners rewrite history.
Yeah, they did. They rewrote the history books because there's a lot of, if you actually delve into the history, there are a lot of female people. Like I'm currently researching 15th century Venice for my new novel. And a lot of the women in Venice at the time ran shops, had jobs, were prominent citizens in the city. I mean, so they weren't just relegated to the home and the kitchens and all these back then. I mean, as history progressed, it got worse, and women got repressed more and more. Like there was a story, a historical fact that I read. I don't remember what exactly time period. I think it was around Victorian era, maybe earlier, where the women had been running the microbreweries. I think this was in England, and they were making money doing this. And of course, the men got jealous and they wanted a cut, so they spread the rumors that the women were witches and they were doing all sorts of weird things. And of course, the rules got changed and women couldn't brew the beer anymore. So yeah, I mean, there are things like this that have happened throughout history, small things, and they've kind of just snowballed and gotten bigger and bigger and bigger until they got totally repressed and had to win their rights back. So yeah, I mean, even in the early Christian church, before the establishment of the Roman Catholic Church, like when it was just beginning, all the meetings of the church happened in the homes, and the women were in charge. But that got shuffled aside when the it got organized into a religion. So yeah.
Yeah, there's even an article that came out in February titled "Women Weren't Excluded from Early Science Fiction; They Were Erased." And so there was actually, I believe it happened in the 50s when some anthologies were put together, and they just skipped all the early science fiction women writers and treated, acted as if women weren't in the canon at all. So I would agree with you that there's been a very strong erasure of any contribution that women have made to all parts of society, including authorship.
The question is, will that happen again? I mean, we're in a movement now towards bringing all of this into light, towards, empowering women and empowering diversity in storytelling, in Hollywood, in all the mediums. Is there going to be a fight back, or is it just going to be a cycle where it's erased again and we go back to what it was before?
I think we're already in the beginnings of that, unfortunately. I don't want to delve into politics too much, but certainly some of the progress that we have made as women, and I'm an old fart, so I can say this because I've lived through it. Some of the progress we've made since the 1950s is starting to get turned back in one way or another. And like I say, I don't want to get heavily into politics, but certainly I keep an eye on politics as it affects my potential, even, as I look to being old enough to retire. I'll never retire from writing. And so, I keep an eye on that stuff. And it's definitely trying to swing back. And I think a lot of women are fighting very hard, thankfully.
I got to agree with that, and I'm a guy, but I will agree with that because I also agree that we're backpedaling in many different things.
Yes.
Not to go into a political this, that, and the other. There are a lot of things that we are backpedaling on. And so I do possibly see women having to continue to fight, for their right to write, or but not just that, just to, it seems like it's a constant cycle. Everything comes back around again. At least that's how I have perceived it, and how I read history, and with the research that I've done myself on that this subject and other subjects. It just seems to be an ongoing circle.
Yeah, well, it's a cycle of misinformation. I mean, you look at some of the things that are being talked about women. They can't do, they didn't do this, they didn't do that, when it's all not true.
Right.
I mean, they're using instances of history, but the history isn't true. I mean, there have been women authors in history. There have been women rulers in history. There have been women everything in history, but it's just gotten repressed and forgotten. And I mean, the Egyptian, I mean, even in ancient Egypt, it happened. I think it was Hatshepsut. Oh, I mispronounced that badly. But anyway, she was a pharaoh. She made temples. She did amazing things for her country. for Egypt. And yet, when her stepson came to be the next ruler, he totally erased her, or tried to anyway.
I was just about to ask if that's the one that was completely erased.
Yeah, well, she wasn't completely erased, thank heavens, but she was nearly erased. Because I mean, because her stepson didn't like her, so he just stepped up and took her out of history. And that's what's happened to women continually throughout history. Their contributions, their things have been suppressed. But
Well,
they are being rediscovered, which is interesting.
look at what happens with the Native Americans. And I'm not one, so, but I have always had great interest in their society. They allowed for people to express their gender in various ways. And there were women warriors, and there were men who, didn't go off to fight battles or went off to fight battles dressed in women's clothes. But when the white people came over, they rewrote even Native American history to match what their expectations were. And the early pioneer researchers very much wrote it the way they saw it, not the way it actually was. So a lot of the historical stuff we have on Native Americans
Oh,
is in.
when it comes to that with Native American stuff, I actually do a lot of different stuff with that. I've partook in, oh God, 75, 80 different Native American powwows. I'm actually part of a clan here in upstate New York where I was part of the clan. I still am affiliated in one way or another. My mother-in-law is the chief or tribal leader or whatever you want to call it. But in the history and what we have learned over the years, the clan mothers decided everything. The chiefs did not. The clan mothers are the ones that named the chief, whether it be a female or a male chief. Regardless, the clan mothers were in charge of the tribe or the clans, not the men. It was the clan mothers. At all times, you always went to the clan mothers for advice for everything. Should we attack? Should we fight? Should we surrender? Should we hunt? Should we do, what do we do to take care of our village? Do we pack up and move? Everything went through the clan mothers first. And they made that decision and passed it down to the chiefs, and then the chief delegated what they were going to do.
So really also what we're talking about is perhaps some kind of imbalance where for a long time, women's stories and voices and power has been either suppressed or hidden or erased. And really we need both the feminine and the masculine, however they show up, in whatever gender they show up in. And it'd be really great if we could be valued for who we are and not so much labeled about stereotypes about what a woman should do or say or be, or how she should dress or how she should write. So I mean, that's something that I play with a lot in my stories, giving my heroines, like Henrietta, sometimes she's called Henry, or Paulette, sometimes she's called Paul. Like, why do we have to be so fixed in our idea of what it means to be male and female? As a writer, I want to be able to explore all of these different ways of being in the world, and I want my female heroines to show up sometimes as in charge, and sometimes as asking for help, sometimes being solo, sometimes bringing in her friends. So there's a lot we can do, I think, as authors to change the conversation around what does it mean to be female? What does it mean? What does feminine even mean? Or what, and bring that into our stories and make it live. And that's, as an author, that's the only thing I know how to do to hopefully change or maybe shape the conversation around women's visibility in the world.
And I think as authors, it's important that we do that, whether or not it's the major theme of our book or not. If we have small elements of our story that explore the important things of society, the important issues of society, we can make a difference. Maybe it'll be a tiny difference because gosh only knows how many people are not reading my books. But I feel better knowing that I've included something that hopefully will challenge somebody's views and make them think. Whether they agree with me or not, that's okay. I just want to stop and make them think.
Absolutely. Now we got about 5 minutes left before we start to tie things up. So I want to just kind of reverse this a little bit on a lot of men writing strong female leads. And is there a bias there, or do you feel that there is a bias there with male authors writing a strong female lead or using a female type name or pseudonym to publish their books as per like a male erotica author, so on and so forth? Do you think there is
I
a
want,
bias
I,
there as
There's
well?
there's a change that's been happening in the Big Five where they're even like as a friend of mine's having an issue with it. He writes amazing female characters and female leads with amazing insight, and honestly you wouldn't know it was a male writing female. Um, but he's been told do not submit to XYZ publishers because they will not accept any males writing female characters anymore.
wow.
It's
I
completely turned the other way.
that's craziness.
And
I
then
I actually had a reviewer compliment me. Now remember, I write as PJ McLean, very, you know, generic as far as am I male, female, it could be either. I had a reviewer compliment me on how well I wrote my female characters. And I was like, thanks, but what does that mean? She said, well, as a male, you're writing really nice women. I'm like, yeah, no, be a woman. So thank you for thinking I write my male characters so well. So I kind of have an insight into the back part of that, which is yes, they don't expect men to write good female characters,
he
and they
keeps
don't expect women to
that
write good
friend of
male characters.
mine, he keeps getting the most ridiculous comments from his beta readers that, oh, well, this is so great, but you wrote this one scene with this male and I think it was too blah 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 and it didn't give her enough power, or you know, he was almost sounding abusive, and I was like, I've edited all his books. There's none of that in here. It's gone the extreme opposite.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I've seen a lot of male writers ask about this too. How do you write strong female characters? Do you think my female characters are good? Because I mean, they're questioning whether they can do it. A lot of male writers, and I've seen a couple male writers say, I don't write female protagonists because I'm afraid to write female protagonists because they're afraid of the backlash, I think. So yeah, it has swung a little further over on the other side for male writers now writing female characters, and I think that has a lot to do with so much of the stereotypes that have been in the past, and the tendency for some people, especially in comic writing, to refrigerate their female characters, as the term is.
Do
What
you
does that
think
mean?
It basically means kill them off because they don't know what to do with them.
To advance a male
Their
character's story.
story, yeah.
Well, I think of Joss Whedon and Buffy, and I want men to write good, strong female characters. I just read a script by a man who's the main character's a woman. He did a very good job. Thought she was very well rounded, and I want men to write good, strong female characters, and they should ask our advice.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. If you want to write a good female character, male or and you're a male, then do your research.
Well, I mean,
Like any character, do your research.
And run it through beta readers to
Yeah.
get the points of different people to see if you're hitting your targets.
how about being friends with a few females? Maybe if you hang out with a few of them and talk to them, then you'll find out how they think.
well, I was just gonna say. I mean, for me as a man to write a female character, that's what I go. I go based on the female friends I have, my wife, girlfriends that I've dated over the years, and my mom or grandma. Different aspects that they have, or characteristics and stuff like that. That's the only thing I could go off of because, well, I don't know what the woman thinks or how, I have to go based on what things my mother have said over the years or things I've heard my grandmother and my mother speak about when I was a child.
Yeah.
Or things like, or, even, ex girlfriends that I've dated, the things that, why it didn't work, and pick those little things out and use that to mold a character. Really, that is all I have to base it on. So, to be honest, to write a female character, I would depend on, a group of women like you and say, hey, I need some help.
I think
Yeah.
there is a bias when it comes to erotic romance and maybe also just regular like romance, the genre of romance, that the book needs to be written under a woman's pen name. And I know male authors who choose to write under a woman's pen name to be more saleable, to be more attractive, and they do their research. They get women to read their work, and they're doing it because that's what readers are expecting. I honestly don't know how well men do who aren't. Sorry, I just spaced on his name, Sparks, Nicholas Sparks, who doesn't write actually in the genre of romance, but he has his own thing. But and I met an erotic romance author, a man who was publishing under his own name, and it actually my instinctive reaction to that was, I don't want to read you. But then I looked at some of his work and I found it very challenging and not at all what I would expect from that kind of story. Now that's just one person, so I don't have a full case, survey done.
But the bias is there.
Yeah,
It's definitely there.
I would like to read that because that would give me a better insight into how a man thinks in whatever, situation I'm going to put my male secondary characters into. And luckily, I work with a bunch of guys, so I get a lot of insight. But I'm always looking for more insight because that means I can write better characters.
I'm interested though, is that, guys question their ability to write a female character, but do women authors ever question their ability to write a male one?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I don't.
I do.
I don't think I do.
See, so I'm just, wondering what the difference is. Why are men so afraid to write female characters, especially these days? Is it because they're afraid of the backlash?
It's from the
Oh.
backlash, yeah, because they're just getting such negative feedback on it. How dare you write as if you were a female, write a female lead. You have no idea. Some of the stuff I've heard, for like I said, from my friends, it might, because I've got two male friends who write female leads and they both do amazing jobs with it. But the negativity that they're getting is just horrible, and it's crushing them.
It's really too bad. I have a child character in my Henrietta trilogy, and I'm not a mother, but I have done tons of child care. But I could still write from the POV of a child, boy child. I was a child, and I was told I did it very, very well. And she even asked me, "Do you have kids?" And I'm like, "No, but I'm an auntie. I was an au pair for many years." So, is there a bias there too? Can someone who hasn't had children write from a child's perspective, of the other gender? Imagination is a rich thing, and humans are so able to jump into each other's skin, actually, with mirror neurons and all the ways that we learn. We can write from other perspectives. That's one of the amazing things.
Yeah,
I
they
think
both do an
that's
amazing job, and but they're it's so sad.
yeah. That's what we have to work on. We have to work on not judging the person writing, but the actual work. If the character is good, then it doesn't matter who wrote it. If the character is stereotypical and badly written, then yes, the argument could be valid. But yeah, don't judge the book until you read it, basically.
Well, and I'm wondering how much of that is because females, generalizing here, have finally found a niche where they're accepted. Hey, it's a romance. It's a woman writer. That's their chance to break into the big time. And so they are made insecure by the thought of a male having a book in the genre competing against them because, hey, they're tired of competing against men. And they're worried that men are going to take back over this little small piece they've cut out for themselves.
But not even with romance. And this one guy writes mostly sci-fi and steampunk. And literally was told by the big companies, if you're a male writing female, don't even bother.
Yeah, because I mean the guys I'm talking about, they're writing fantasy, so
Yeah.
Yes, that definitely a subject for another evening to go into that. We're going to wrap things up, but before we do, I like to share where everyone can legally stalk you all. So we'll start all the way over to my far right with PJ. Where can we find you, your books, your website, blog, Facebook, social media, wherever you like to be found?
I'm about everywhere. So, and it's real easy because it's under PJ McLean. My website is pjmclean.com. My Facebook is PJ McLean. And hey guys, it's Layne. We throw the Y in there to make life interesting. My Twitter is at PJ McLean. So I'm real easy. I'm trying to make myself real easy to find because everything is all under the PJ McLean. It's MacLayne.
All right, Beth.
Oops. Okay. Hi, everyone. You can find me at bethbarani.com and everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I love Twitter. On Twitter, it's Beth_Barani. But if you were just to type in my name, you would find me. And that's Barany, or as my husband likes to say, any bar turned around. So Barani, Beth Barani, and happy to chat with folks on social media.
All right, Katie.
I am super easy to find. Go to my website by looking me up by name, katiesolitis.com, and all of my links are right there on the homepage. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, what have you. Spilling Ink's on there as well. So one-stop shopping.
Excellent. Anita.
I'm over on Twitter at Scribe77. I have a Facebook group, AF Stewart's Minions, Instagram at AF Stewart Author. My Facebook page is AF Stewart, and I have a website, Welcome to Avalon.
And Holly, where do we find you?
I'm on I've got the Facebook page at Midnight to Morning and Other Writings. Twitter's is at Midnight to Morning. And then everything is linked from my website, which is Dragswife, DDRAIGSWIFE at blogspot.com. I don't use the Glow Gal Morgan for a whole lot of stuff because people can't spell it. And Richard knows why I have to use the hyphenated name.
Yes, we do. I am Richard White. You can find me at authorrichardwhite.com. You can find all of my links on there for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, so on and so forth. My Twitch, right here, you want to be on the show, Authors Write Aloud. There is a link there so you can sign up via Sign Up Genius to be on our show. Start booking it up because we've got a lot of openings coming up in July and August. We are open for business, and we have a lot of empty dates. I go on vacation for July 21st. That weekend I will not be around, but other than that, all the other weekends are open. As far as I know, I got to check with the wife though. You can find my new book, Shattered Glass, on Amazon. Sorry that his sweatshirt disappears because I have a green screen. His sweatshirt is green. But you can find Shattered Glass on Amazon and all the other places. If you like the show, right down there on Twitch, you can find the donate button and hit the donate, or you can also jump over on my Patreon. Thank you all so much, ladies, for coming on. Lovely, lovely show. Great topic. I've enjoyed it very much, even though that I am half disappearing here. But that is okay. I think it's because you all took over.
Thanks, Richard. It's been so much fun.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, thanks. It's been fun.
Nice to meet you all.
All right, now we can do that. And
So Richard, how do we, if we want to grab it and share it on, I make a blog post out of these.
Oh,
I can just
yep,
grab it
that's
on
fine.
YouTube.
Yep, you can grab that video link off of YouTube once I publish it. As soon as I stop streaming, it should go. If not, let me know. I can get it to you. And then of course, it'll also be on Twitch, and I'm going to make it available on Facebook too. I'm not going to delete it there either. Looks like there was quite a few views and stuff on it, and all of that. Thank you so much for coming on, everybody. The late jump in with Anita and Katie. Once I saw the topic where it was going, I needed more expertise.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out. I'll anytime you need extra person, let me know.
Will do.
Great. All right, you guys, I'm going to go get some dinner. Take care.